Hello, my wonderful third graders. This is our last read aloud for our Native Americans, Regions, and Cultures unit. The last one. Lesson 8 Native Americans of the Arctic, Subarctic. Okay, so this may be the last read aloud, but next week we're going to do some fun and interesting activities to learn more about the Native Americans. Some vocabulary you will hear throughout this read aloud. Caribou, large North American deer. The word enabled is a verb. It means made possible. Hardship is a condition that is difficult to endure. Igloos are dome-shaped houses usually made of snow and used by the Inuit in the Arctic. Inhospitable is an adjective. It describes something. It means not friendly, unfavorable. A kayak is a type of canoe invented by the Inuit that was able to move swiftly and silently and was steered with a double-bladed paddle. The word pursuit is a noun. It's an effort to capture, secure, or obtain. Stamina means strength, the power to endure. Okay, so the subarctic and Arctic region is in the very north in what is present-day Canada. What do you think the climate is going to be like in the north? How do you think that's going to affect the way the Inuits live, their dwellings, their clothes, what they eat, if they're up north where it is more cold than in the south? Make some predictions in your head. If it's possible to survive on a piece of land throughout history, people have tried to do so. It is thought that the ancestors of the Inuit, the people of the Thule culture, migrated from Asia to the frozen lands of the north to Greenland, Alaska, and Canada about 1,000 years ago. The people of the Thule culture were not the first people to live in the frozen part of the world. The Inuits are the descendants of these ancient people. And in this read aloud, you will be learning about the Inuit in addition to more about the Thule. The Inuit actually called the Thule Tunit. This cold part of the world that became home to the people of the Thule culture is also known as the Arctic subarctic. The Arctic is a harsh, frozen, yet stunningly beautiful place. Just like the other Native Americans you have heard about, the people of the Thule culture originally came from Asia. Like most people who migrated a long time ago, the Thule moved from place to place in pursuit of food, shelter, and land to live on. If you choose to live in a place where much of the land is frozen, an ocean or a lake will have to provide many of the things you need to survive. In particular, the people of the Thule culture relied heavily on hunting a very large whale called the bowhead whale. Every part of the whale enabled the people of the Thule culture to survive. One whale could keep a village alive throughout an entire winter, because whales are huge. The people of the Thule culture lived in villages of about 6 to 30 houses. The houses were dug into the ground. Whalebone, stone, driftwood, and sod made up the frames of the houses. They built snow homes or igloos in the winter months as they moved from place to place, hunting as they went. The people of the Thule culture used dogs to pull sleds made out of driftwood and whalebones. They used the bones and teeth of the animals they hunted to hunt the same animals. They built boats out of walrus ribs and walrus hides and hunted at sea in the icy waters. They used lamps powered by seal and whale oil. It seems that during the period of a mini ice age that swept across the world, the people of the Thule culture found it even more difficult to survive. Once the colder climate came and the ice formed over the once free-moving ocean, the whales that the people of the Thule culture relied on disappeared. Essential plants disappeared too. Scientists believe that just as with other native groups, when faced with great hardship, the people of the Thule culture began to migrate. It seems that they began to migrate east in search of food, shelter, and land. Not all of the people of the Thule culture left, though, and many years later, another group of people arrived either by boat or on foot across the frozen ocean. These people joined the Thule and created a new group. We call these new people the Inuit, and they made their home in the frozen lands of North America. When the Inuit arrived, they brought with them more sophisticated hunting techniques and were more able to withstand the harsh conditions. The Inuit were a nomadic hunting and gathering people. Over time, the older Thule culture merged with the new culture, and Inuit became the name of the dominant culture. Interestingly, historians think that it is possible that the Inuit once lived in Greenland and Iceland before moving farther south in the Arctic subarctic region. The Inuit may have encountered Vikings in Greenland, and the Vikings may have left Greenland for various reasons, including conflicts with the Inuit. Historians are not completely sure what happened during this early part of Inuit migration. What we do know, though, is that the Inuit culture did take hold, and these people found new and ingenious ways of surviving in such an inhospitable region. You may have heard the word Eskimo used as the name for these people. This is not a name they ever called themselves, and is not what they prefer to be called. What other people did you learn about recently who lived in Greenland and Iceland? The Vikings. Although the Inuit did hunt whales out in the open waters, they also relied heavily on fishing, catching seals and walruses, and hunting caribou and other smaller mammals. The Inuit hunted the caribou not only for meat, but also for its very warm fur. Caribou fur was used to make all kinds of clothes, from coats to leggings, hats, and gloves. Also, unlike the other regions of America that you have heard about, it was and is impossible to farm in the Arctic subarctic. However, during the spring and summer months, it is possible to gather berries and seaweed and collect eggs. These things the Inuit did. The Inuit invented the kayak. A kayak is a light one-person boat that can be used for hunting or transportation. An Inuit kayak moved swiftly and silently and was powered by a double-bladed paddle. The Inuit used whale bones for the frame, covering it with a stretched animal skins. Then they covered the skins with whale fat. The fat made the kayak waterproof. I love going kayaking. My parents have a few kayaks, and I like to go in lakes, in the ocean, and creeks and rivers. Without the ability to farm, the Inuit had to move across the snow and ice-covered land in pursuit of the animals they hunted. As this became the only way to survive, they perfected a way to travel and a way to build igloos, so that they were safe and snug. Just like the people of the Thule culture, the Inuit made well-crafted sleds. Inuit sleds were made out of animal bones and seal rope. The Inuit were skilled dog trainers, and these sleds were pulled by well-trained dogs. In fact, scientists believe that when the mini ice age occurred, it would not have been possible for Inuit to have survived in the frigid Arctic without the stamina and loyalty of the sled dogs. Dogs are awesome. The Inuit took the skills already developed by the people of the Thule culture and developed them even further. The Inuit trained these dogs to not only pull heavy sleds that could weigh hundreds of pounds fully loaded, they also trained them to sniff out seals' breathing holes. The Inuit mostly used male dogs that were hitched together. Inuit dogs could and would also hunt down polar bears. Their technique was to surround an unsuspecting polar bear until their master could kill it. Traditionally, in the wintertime, the Inuit lived in igloos. The word igloo in the Inuit word is the Inuit word for shelter. The Inuit igloo was shaped like a dome. The igloo had a tunnel entrance that trapped cold air so that it could not enter the main part of the home. Igloos were made from hard blocks of snow. These homes were not made to last because Inuit moved frequently, hunting and trapping animals. In the warmer months, the Inuit lived in tents made from caribou or seal skin. The Inuit also had a unique way of greeting one another. Although we might greet one another by shaking hands, the Inuit would do so by rubbing noses. The ancient Inuit people were very talented artists. They carved beautiful animal figures out of bones, walrus ivory, and caribou antlers. They also carved religious images and icons. They made many of their weapons, tools, and utensils this way too. Many of the things they carved had religious significance. Like other native tribes, the Inuit believed that all living and non living things had a spirit. They believed that when a spirit died, it simply moved on to live in another world. In addition, the Inuit believed that the spirits could be communicated with and even controlled by a shaman. Inuit shamans wore masks and specially decorated fur coats when communicating with the spirits. They asked the spirits to bring good health and good hunting. They respected the animals they hunted and believed that when an animal was killed, its spirit went to live in another animal. You heard about shamans in earlier lessons. What is a shaman? Is a person believed to be a go-between for the natural and supernatural worlds, using magic to cure illnesses, tell the future, and control spirits. The Inuit are thought to be the last group of native people to have arrived in North America. Because of this and the fact that they made their home in the frozen north, it could be said that their culture encountered or came into contact with less of the overwhelming influence of the European settlers. As it is true of the other groups of Native Americans today, many of the Inuit of today are a modern people. Many of them use snowmobiles instead of sleds, and most use igloos not for their main dwellings, but only as a temporary temporary homes on hunting expeditions. Much of their ancient language and customs, however, are still a part of their everyday lives. In order to live in such an inhospitable area, the Inuit had to find clever ways to obtain their food because they could not grow crops. What were the two main ways the Inuit people obtained food? Fishing and hunting. In pursuit of food in the cold Arctic waters, the Inuit invented a boat that carried one person and could move swiftly and silently through the water. What was that boat called? It's called a kayak. The Inuit built a type of dwelling that enabled them in ancient times to live in the harsh Arctic subarctic climate in the winter. What was that type of house called? An igloo. Do most Inuit today still live in igloos? No, but they use them on hunting trips as a type of temporary dwelling. The Inuit also had to create warm clothing to help them survive the harsh climate. Describe the Inuit clothing. Caribou fur was used for warm coats, leggings, hats, and gloves. What animal, which possesses great stamina, did the Inuit domesticate or train to help them hunt their prey? Dogs. How did dogs help the Inuit survive the harsh conditions in the Arctic subarctic? The dogs pulled heavy sleds, they sniffed out seal breathing holes, and they helped hunt down polar bears for the Inuit hunters. Do the Inuit still live in the Arctic subarctic region of North America today? Yes. Why have the Inuit today kept more of their ancient customs than did some of the other native tribes we discussed in this domain? They are believed to have arrived in North America many years after the other groups and therefore had less contact with European settlers, less outside influence. You have learned about several different regions and several different groups of Native American people throughout this domain. Which of these Native American groups do you find the most interesting and why? Be sure to include in your answer specific details about the culture you chose and why you find them the most interesting. Our word for the day today is inhospitable. It's kind of fun to say. Say the word inhospitable. In the real lodge you heard, what we do know, though, is that the Inuit culture did take hold, and these people found new and ingenious ways of surviving in such an inhospitable region. Say the word inhospitable. Inhospitable means unfavorable or not friendly. So the prefix in means not. If you're hospitable, you show hospitality. Do you remember when we talked about how some of the characters in The Wind in the Willows showed hospitality? You couldn't say that Rat was inhospitable, right? He was very hospitable. He invited Mole in to live with him for a while. Have you ever been to a place that was inhospitable? Not friendly, unfavorable. Where were you? Why was the place inhospitable? What part of speech is inhospitable? It describes a place, right? It's a descriptive word, so it would be an adjective. All right, good job, third graders. I hope you've enjoyed learning about Native Americans, and we will continue doing some different stuff next week.